Belarus is a country in Eastern Europe with a long and complex history. Its land has been shaped by many cultures, kingdoms, empires, wars, and political changes. Although Belarus became an independent country only in 1991, its past stretches back thousands of years. Understanding Belarus means looking not only at political events but also at how ordinary people lived, how cultures mixed, and how geography influenced everything. The following history is written in simple English and divided into clear periods so it is easy to follow. The earliest history of Belarus begins long before written records. Archaeologists know that people lived in the region that is now Belarus as early as the Stone Age. These first settlers were hunter-gatherers, who traveled from place to place following animals and seasonal plants. Slowly, as time passed, farming became more common, and people began building permanent villages. By around the first millennium BCE, the population of what is now Belarus consisted mostly of Baltic tribes. Later, beginning around the 6th century CEE, Slavic peoples started moving into the region from the south. These Slavic settlers eventually became the ancestors of modern Belarusians. Over time, the Slavs mixed with the local Baltic population, blending their cultures, languages, and traditions. These early Slavic communities lived in small settlements near rivers, because rivers were extremely important for travel and trade. Belarus has many rivers, which made it a natural link between Northern Europe and the Byzantine Empire in the south. This role as a crossroads would influence Belarusian history for centuries to come. By the 9th century, the territory of Belarus became part of a large and influential medieval East Slavic state known as Kievan Rus. This state was centered in Kyiv, now in Ukraine, and was ruled by the Varangians, who were Viking traders and warriors. They established trade routes, built cities, and brought new forms of government and culture. Cities such as Polotsk, Turov, and Pinsk grew in importance. Among them, Polotsk became one of the most significant early centers of Belarusian political and cultural life. It formed its own principality, the Principality of Polotsk, which became powerful and sometimes acted independently from Kyiv. The city was known for its skilled craftsmen, traders, and religious leaders. During this time, the people of the region gradually adopted Christianity, which played a major role in shaping the culture. Christianity first spread in the Eastern Slavic lands after the baptism of Kyiv in 988. Churches were built, writing developed, and religious leaders helped preserve and translate important texts. The early Belarusian lands thus became part of the Christian cultural world of Eastern Europe. However, the unity of Kievan Rus did not last. Over time, it began to weaken due to internal conflicts among its rulers. This allowed local principalities, such as Polotsk, to assert more independence. Meanwhile, new dangers appeared from the east as nomadic groups attacked the region. This period of fragmentation set the stage for major changes in the region's politics. By the 13th century, a new powerful state began to rise, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. Although it was originally a Baltic state, it expanded rapidly, absorbing many Slavic lands, including most of the territory of present-day Belarus. The Grand Duchy became one of the largest states in medieval Europe, stretching from the Baltic Sea in the north to the Black Sea in the south. Belarusian lands played a major role in this state. Many historians note that for several centuries, the majority of the Grand Duchy's population was Slavic, and the main administrative language was a Slavic language known as Chancery Ruthenian, which is considered an ancestor of modern Belarusian. This demonstrates the strong influence of the Belarusian region within the duchy. During this era, the cities of Minsk, Hrodna, Vitebsk, and Brest grew in size and economic strength. Trade developed, especially along river routes. The Grand Duchy also created a legal system called the Statutes of Lithuania, which were written in Ruthenian and are considered some of the most advanced legal documents of their time. One of the most dramatic moments in the history of the Grand Duchy came with the rise of the Teutonic Knights, a German military order. The Knights attempted to expand into the territory of the duchy, but they were defeated in the famous Battle of Grunwald in 1410, a joint victory of the Lithuanians, Poles, and Ruthenians. This victory protected Belarusian lands from foreign conquest and strengthened the Grand Duchy. A major shift occurred in 1569 with the Union of Lublin, which merged the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Kingdom of Poland into a single state, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. This new state was one of the largest and most powerful political entities in Europe. Belarusian lands became part of this vast and multi-ethnic country. In the Commonwealth, Belarusian nobles enjoyed certain rights and freedoms, and the region remained an important cultural center. However, the Polish influence grew stronger, especially in religion and culture. Many nobles adopted the Polish language, and the Catholic Church gained significant influence. Still, most of the rural population remained Eastern Orthodox or later joined the Uniate Church, a form of Catholicism that preserved some Orthodox traditions. The Commonwealth allowed local self-government in many areas, and Belarusian towns benefited from the Magdeburg Rights, which granted them specific legal privileges. Commerce expanded, crafts flourished, and printing became more widespread. A famous figure of this period was Francis Scarina, an early Belarusian printer who translated and printed books in the early 16th century. However, life was not peaceful. In the 17th century, Belarus suffered from wars, including the Khmelnytsky Uprising, the Swedish invasion known as the Deluge, and conflicts with Russia. These wars devastated many towns and villages. The economy suffered, and large parts of the population were killed or displaced. Despite the cultural achievements of the earlier Commonwealth period, these wars significantly weakened the state. By the late 18th century, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had become weakened by internal political problems and pressure from neighboring powers. Between 1772 and 1795, the Commonwealth was divided in 3 stages by Russia, Prussia, and Austria in an event known as the Partitions of Poland. Almost all of the Belarusian lands were taken by the Russian Empire. Under Russian rule, Belarus experienced major changes. The Russian authorities worked to integrate the region into their empire. The Belarusian language and culture were discouraged, and many local traditions were suppressed. The Uniate Church was dissolved, and its members were forced to convert to Russian Orthodoxy. Russian became the administrative language, and Belarusian identity was often dismissed as simply a form of Russian. Despite this repression, Belarusian lands remained productive. Agriculture was the main occupation, and the system of serfdom, which tied peasants to the land and gave landowners great power, continued to shape rural life. Belarusian peasants lived difficult lives with limited rights and faced heavy taxes and restrictions. Belarus also witnessed several attempts at rebellion. The most notable were the uprisings of 1830-31 and 1863-64. Led mostly by Polish and Belarusian nobles who sought to restore independence from Russia. Both uprisings failed, and Russia responded with even stricter rule. Landowners were punished, political freedoms were reduced, and many people were exiled to Siberia. While political freedoms were restricted, the 19th century also saw the beginnings of a cultural revival. Writers, ethnographies, and educators began documenting Belarusian folklore, songs, and spoken language. This helped shape a new national consciousness that would grow in the 20th century. The early 20th century was a time of enormous change for Belarus. Industrialization slowly reached some Belarusian cities, and political movements grew as people demanded more rights. The 1905 Russian Revolution sparked strikes and protests in Belarus. World War I brought heavy destruction to Belarus, which lay directly on the front lines between Germany and Russia. Many villages and towns were destroyed, and large numbers of people fled or were forced into labor. When the Russian Empire collapsed in 1917 during the Bolshevik Revolution, a power vacuum was created in the region. Amid this chaos, Belarusian national activists declared the Belarusian People's Republic (BPR) in 1918. However, it did not last long because different foreign powers occupied the region at different times, including Germany, Poland, and the Bolsheviks. Although short-lived, the BPR became an important symbol of Belarusian independence. After the Polish-Soviet War ended in 1921, the Treaty of Riga divided Belarus into 2 parts. The western part became part of Poland, while the eastern part became the Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic (BSSR), within the Soviet Union. Life in these 2 halves was very different. Under Polish rule, Belarusian culture was suppressed, and many Belarusians faced discrimination. Efforts to establish Belarusian language schools or cultural institutions were often blocked. In the Soviet East, the early years brought a mix of opportunity and repression. At first, the Soviet government supported Belarusian language and culture as part of a policy called Korenizatsiya, indigenization. Belarusian schools, literature, and universities grew. However, this ended in the 1930s under Joseph Stalin. Many Belarusian intellectuals were arrested or executed during Stalin's Great Purge. Forced collectivization of farms led to hardship, and political freedoms were almost non-existent. World War II was one of the darkest periods in Belarusian history. In 1939, after the Soviet Union and Germany signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, the Soviets took over western Belarus from Poland, uniting almost all Belarusian lands for the first time in centuries. But in 1941, Germany broke the pact and invaded the Soviet Union. Belarus became one of the first targets. The Nazi occupation was brutal. Almost every city and village suffered destruction. Entire communities were wiped out. The Jewish population, which had been significant in Belarus, was almost completely exterminated during the Holocaust. Some towns lost more than 90% of their Jewish residents. Belarusians formed one of the largest partisan movements in Europe. These resistance fighters carried out sabotage and fought against the German army from forests and rural hideouts. Their efforts were important in slowing the Nazis, but the price was high. The Germans carried out cruel reprisals, burning villages and killing civilians. By the time the war ended in 1945, it is estimated that a quarter of the Belarusian population had died. Thousands of villages were destroyed, and many never recovered. Belarus suffered more than almost any other country involved in the war. After the war, Belarus remained part of the Soviet Union as the Belarusian SSR. The period after 1945 became one of rebuilding and reconstruction. Industrialization increased rapidly, and Belarus became one of the most industrially developed parts of the USSR. Cities such as Minsk were rebuilt almost from scratch, with new Soviet-style architecture and wide avenues. Life improved in some ways. Unemployment was low, education became widely available, and many people moved from farms to cities. However, political freedoms remained limited. The Communist Party controlled all aspects of life, including media, culture, and public speech. A major tragedy struck in 1986 when the Chernobyl nuclear disaster occurred in neighboring Ukraine. A large portion of the radioactive fallout fell on Belarus, contaminating land and affecting the health of hundreds of thousands of people. Many villages in southern Belarus had to be abandoned. The long-term health and environmental effects are still felt today. In the late 1980s, the Soviet Union began to weaken. Belarus experienced rising nationalism, calls for environmental protection, and demands for political reform. These movements paved the way for the next major chapter in Belarusian history. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, and Belarus declared its independence, becoming the Republic of Belarus. At first, the country experimented with building democratic institutions. A Belarusian flag, coat of arms, and symbols were restored from the early 20th century independence movement. The Belarusian language was promoted, and political parties emerged. However, in 1994, Alexander Lukashenko was elected president. Over time, his government gained strong control over politics, media, and public life. Belarus adopted symbols more similar to the Soviet era, and Russian language became dominant again in government and education. Critics argue that Belarus became an authoritarian state, while supporters say it provided stability. Belarus maintained close economic and political ties with Russia. Although it remained officially independent, the two countries formed agreements for close cooperation, including a union state framework, though full unification never occurred. In 2020, Belarus experienced major protests after a disputed election. Many Belarusians demanded political change, claiming the election was unfair. The government responded with force, leading to international criticism and sanctions. Political tensions and economic challenges continue to shape the country today. Despite centuries of foreign rule, warfare, and shifting borders, Belarusian culture has remained strong. The Belarusian language, although less widely spoken than Russian today, continues to be an important symbol of national identity. Traditional Belarusian music, dance, crafts, and festivals are still part of everyday life, especially in rural areas. Belarusian literature also plays a key role in national culture. Writers such as Yanka Kapala, Yakub Kolas, and Vasil Bykov are widely celebrated. Their works explore themes of rural life, war, national identity, and human dignity. Religion also remains important. The Eastern Orthodox Church is the largest religious community, followed by the Catholic Church. Belarus has also been home historically to Jewish, Muslim, and Protestant communities, each contributing to the country's cultural diversity. Belarus has no mountains or seacoast. Its flat terrain and open fields made it easy for armies to cross during wars. This geographic position between larger powers such as Russia, Poland, and Germany greatly influenced its history. The country's frequent invasions and shifting borders were partly a result of its location on the crossroads of Europe. However, this geography also made Belarus an important trade route. Rivers such as the Dnieper-Niemen and Western Dvina connected Belarus to the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea. This helped develop trade and cultural exchange throughout its history. Today, Belarus is an independent country with its own government, culture, and economy. Minsk, its capital, is a modern city with universities, theaters, and cultural institutions. The country has a well-educated population and strong traditions in manufacturing, agriculture, and science. However, Belarus also faces challenges. Political tensions, economic dependence on Russia, and international isolation shape its current situation. Many Belarusians continue to hope for a peaceful and prosperous future, building on their long and resilient history. The history of Belarus is a story of survival, adaptation, and cultural endurance. From ancient tribes to medieval states, from the Commonwealth to the Russian Empire, from the tragedies of World War II to modern independence, Belarusian lands have seen enormous change. Despite foreign domination and hardship, the people of Belarus preserve their identity, traditions, and hopes. Today's Belarus is shaped by all these past events, and understanding this history helps explain its present and future.